Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Bob Mendelsohn, and this is the Bob's Your Uncle podcast. Today we finish with part two of the wonderful interview with Daniah Greenberg. You met her last week. This week you're going to hear much more about this woman and her Bible project. Stay tuned. You can now find us and comment to us wherever you get your podcasts. Tell us what matters to you, what triggers your joy, what bothers you in the world. Let us know. We'll see where the Spirit leads us. Wherever you are just now, whether you're out for your evening constitutional, or you're here in Australia or back in the United States with friends, or all by yourself with your headset on, hey, wherever you are, thanks for joining us these 18 minutes. Of note, the opinions are strictly my own and those of my guests.
But I do know that I love you, and I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world this would be.
Historical marker of the week. In 1945, on the 6th of August, the United States dropped the atomic bomb, nicknamed Little Boy, on Hiroshima, Japan, killing an estimated 70,000 people instantly, tens of thousands more in the years that followed. It was dropped by the U.S. B-29 Enola Gay. In 1806, Emperor Francis II abdicated, ending the Holy Roman Empire. In 1890 was the first execution by electric chair, and in 1965, United States President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act, which sought to overcome legal barriers at the state and local levels that prevented black folk from exercising their right to vote. And that's what happened on this date in history, the 6th of August.
And I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world this would be.
And now we come back with part two of this interview with Daniah Greenberg, and then we'll talk to you at the end. Daniah, your family experienced some serious grief last year at the passing of your beloved husband and the father and patriarch of your family. Let's talk through that. What was going on in the family, and how'd you handle it?
It was vascular dementia. And what happened was Mark had a very, very high cholesterol. I knew the first year married to him, his cholesterol was 601.
Did it even go up that high?
They didn't know how to have numbers that high 35 years ago. But they said, basically, you have to stop eating everything, start eating cardboard. Well, he didn't want to do that.
No.
But over the years, he lived to 60 years old and actually outlived every other member of his family, including both his parents. He was a real fighter all the way to the end, and we lost him.
It was a protracted battle.
Yeah, he had vascular dementia lasts average of around 5 years, and we had about 3.5 years with him. I'll tell you, the most amazing thing about it is, and this is how I'm so convinced that we're not just physical beings, but we're spiritual beings, because even though his physical faculties began to decay right in front of us, which was hard to watch. When we would start to talk about things of God, it was as if his spirit would rise up and he would be clear-minded and speak so profoundly. In other words, right up until the end, his spiritual man rise up, even Like, we're talking like within the 2 or 3 days of when he passed. So we had a beautiful life together, and he was a great father, and we're so glad the TLV's finally here. Yeah.
How did you survive? How did your family survive after? I mean, he was a mainstay. He was the mainstay. I
Yeah.
mean, you were very involved. You're the public face. Mark was behind the scenes a lot. Though at conferences and whatnot, you and I and he would hang out.
Yeah.
So I really, and your kids. But how did your family deal with his loss? I mean, it was a long time coming.
Yeah.
How did you deal with it?
I think that one of the great blessings of living in 3 to 4 generations of faith, which is the basis of Judaism, that we don't live just for our own faith, but to pass our faith to our children. I was blessed to have a family ministry with my husband where my children were not just very active, but they had their own spiritual growth through this. And I will say that in watching their father walk down this long road, it matured them in ways I don't think they would have matured so quickly into the calling of God that they have. So I think that, okay, so we celebrate Shabbat in our home on Friday night. And when I tell you that the presence of God in and between us in a home setting was just as powerful as in congregation. We would worship together and sing together and pray the blessings over one another and dance around our living room. We needed that connection to God because we weren't able to have it in congregation. So I think that for us, Judaism is very much a faith of our home. So I think that's what got us through, was having an active, vibrant relationship with God together as a family.
You've mentioned the TLV several times. Let's unpack those 3 letters. What's T and L and V? What does that mean?
Well, TLV stands for the Tree of Life version of the Holy Scriptures, which is a translation of the Bible that was compiled by 32 PhDs from 5 different denominations of Judaism that all came together, and we developed a 12-step process to translate from the original Masoretic and Nestle-Aland New Testament, the Greek translation. And these scholars, these PhD scholars that had been hippies back in the Jesus movement, had grown into Jewish scholarship and were actually affecting translation and theology in mainstream organizations, including we have translators from Hebrew University. So Hebrew and Jewish people Hebrew, Jewish, and Christian people came together to vet the scriptures together from the original manuscripts to have a translation that was done in Jewish sentence structure. And that's what the TLV is.
Is it more like word for word or phrase for phrase? Is it?
It's definitely
modern?
A word for word translation, and it's developed around 16 key principles you can find in our Bible app that explain what choices we made for the language that we used in it. But we actually started developing the translation by doing a survey and asking the broader Messianic community, what words do you think are important enough that they would add a depth of meaning that English language does not? And so we carefully curated Hebrew transliterated words so that they would add dimension without straying from the text, obviously.
It's what a lot of people come to us as Messianic folk, and they say, you're Jewish, so you've got an inside scoop on stuff.
Oh yeah, people actually believe that. And the funny part about it is the inside scoop, if I were to tell you what the inside scoop is, it's not how well we know Hebrew, because most people don't get it, that the Hebrew you speak in Israel is not the same as biblical Hebrew. They learn Israeli Hebrew, and then it doesn't translate to reading the ancient text. But reading the ancient text and drilling down to the word is not nearly as important as looking at the vastness of God and looking up like a telescope instead of looking down like a microscope. And Jewish sensibilities about the place of God in our lives is a place of grandeur. And so when we reduce him to only dissecting words, we kind of lose the vastness of the power and strength of God beyond our generation. We shouldn't be the one dissecting the text. The text is supposed to dissect us.
Why did we need another one?
Well, this is the first translation done by Jewish believers in Yeshua who are Jewish in their thinking. They're Jewish in where they learned their reverence for God as children, and then grew up inside Judaism with an understanding of Messiah. And to be truthful, that hasn't happened since the resurrection. So this is a unique thing. And one of the scriptures I love the best is in Romans 3:2, where it says, "What's the advantage of being Jewish? Much in every way, for they were entrusted with the sayings of God."
Costs, are they really they're really expensive, aren't they? I mean, these...
No, actually, you can go to your app store right now, and you can find the TLV Bible. It's a white icon that looks like a little book. It's got a little olive branch on it, and it says TLV. That app has the entirety of the text on it. It also has an audio Bible. It also has the ancient scrolls, the Torah scrolls you can read on it. It's got 3 art collections. And beyond all that, the text is free. Our job is to make sure that the text is available for anybody who wants it free of charge. That's why we're a Bible society. But then we make Bibles because people, do you know that the average American owns 4 Bibles?
Get out.
The average American.
350 million Americans
Yes.
or so, times 4. That's how many Bibles
That's how many Bibles are out there. Yeah.
in the United States
And
right now.
believe it or not, there's 5, even though the TLV's only been out for 10 years, the work of our family in the Bible Society, a not-for-profit institution, we have moved 500,000 Bibles in 10 years. And that's no small thing. Our goal is to get the Word of God into the hands of people, because unless you read it for yourself, you're missing the opportunity to learn to hear God's voice speaking to you.
How do people reach you?
TLVBibleSociety.org. TLVBibleSociety.org.
Gotcha. I'm going to put that in the notes to the podcast. What's next for y'all?
Oh, that's a great question. So I just finished the Children's Bible. Makes me super happy. I have done a 90 image biblical art scroll from Genesis to Revelation that I'm making available for congregations to make a Torah for children to carry. So I'm working on that, and I'm going to make an art journal out of it, because I happen to be an artist. So as I draw, God shows me things. And when I draw something in this 2-dimensional space, to move it and turn it and look at it from a different angle, to constantly be asking God for a different view of the same story in the Bible will give me insight into his character. So I've been working a lot on art. The TLV Bible app is going beautifully. Do you know that there's been over 675,000 downloads of the TLV through YouVersion alone?
That's a remarkable statistic, and you're a remarkable woman. I love knowing your family. I trust that the Bob's Your Uncle podcast family is enjoying getting to know you as well in these 2 episodes now that we're in season 5 of the podcast. It has been a joy to get to see you, to be with you, and all these other friends of ours, to be with your son last week at the conference there. God be with you in all your projects as you seek to make him known. Thanks so much. What do you think about all this? Why don't you write me, bobmendo@aol.com, or comment on an Instagram or TikTok to me. I'd love to know what you're thinking. Every week we read from the #1 bestseller of all time. That's the Bible. And of course, I've already spoken a bit about that today, but I thought I'd read this verse from the Newer Testament. Of course, from the TLV Bible, from John chapter 5. The testimony I have is greater than that of John. The works the Father has given me to finish, the very works I'm doing, testify about me, that the Father has sent me. And the Father who sent me has testified concerning me. You've never heard his voice, nor seen his form, nor do you have his word living in you, because you do not trust the one he sent. You search the Scriptures, because you suppose that in them you have eternal life. It is these that testify about me, yet you are unwilling to come to me so that you may have life. As I've already told you, next Tuesday we'll hear from Michelle Beadle, whom I interviewed at that Messianic conference where I met Daniah again. And then next week after that, I will be in Houston and Kansas City, and I'm going to interview people live, so you'll get to meet more folks as I travel. I want you to understand this idea of Messianic Jewish. I don't want to leave that out. If this whole business of Messianic Jewish is new to you, write to me and say, tell me more about this. I want to help explain that to you. We're Jewish people who believe Jesus is the Messiah. That's what Messianic Jews are supposed to be. We're focused on him, Yeshua, we call him, and want everybody everywhere to encounter him. That doesn't mean everyone I interview here on the podcast are necessarily Jewish or necessarily believers in Yeshua. This is a podcast of people talking to people. I want you to get to know people in all circumstances of life, in Turkey, in Portugal, in Argentina, wherever I travel. I want you to get to meet them. When I get back from Kansas City, I'll be back here in Nashville for a short time, then off to Atlanta, and then to Knoxville, Tennessee, before I get back home to Sydney. I want you to meet folks. I want you to get to know the folks. And I want you to appreciate this world in which we find ourselves. Until next week, then, when things seem bleak or uncertain, look up to God. He's in his heaven. And Bob's your uncle. Shalom.